I'm David, a contract employee at a confectionery manufacturer. I joined this company right after graduating from high school. When I started, I worked in logistics at a factory near the headquarters, but now I'm handling orders and purchases at the main office. I prefer this clerical work over physical labor. It's been 10 years since I joined, and I think I've gotten quite used to the job. Recently, Hannah started getting involved in the business. She's 4 years younger than me and is referred to as the boss daughter behind her back rather than by her real name. Frankly, she's not good at her job. She's slow and even slacks off. However, Mr. Johnson, the boss, is lenient with his daughter and doesn't reprimand her despite seeing this. My colleagues are also fed up with her. Man, Hannah was just on her cell phone all day today, just texting and slacking off. Due to her status, the other employees couldn't say anything to her. One day, during such a routine, following an organizational change, there was a seat rearrangement, and Hannah started working next to me. Mr. Johnson told me, if my daughter has any trouble, please help her out. Since then, I've been taking care of my own work and looking after her as well. She's always on her cell phone during work and sometimes leaves her tasks midway to take a break. Watching this every day was frustrating for me. Hey, could you check these documents too? She glanced at me briefly from her cell phone and said, I'll do it later, before returning her gaze to her cell phone. In the end, she left saying she'd check the documents tomorrow and went home on time. Every day was like this. Because of her, I often had to work overtime. Seriously, I should have just done it myself from the beginning. I grumbled to myself in the empty office. The future looked bleak. A few weeks later, my anger finally erupted. While I was teaching her, she kept glancing at her cell phone, so I blurted out, "Don't take your job so lightly." She paused for a moment with an annoyed look, but I continued, "If you are going to work half-heartedly, it might be better if you quit. To be honest, you're a hindrance right now." "What's with that attitude?" she retorted, her eyes red, and she stormed off. Watching her leave, I immediately regretted speaking so harshly. The next day, she came to work with swollen eyes. She had obviously cried. It was my fault. As I was about to apologize, she said, "I'm sorry." I hadn't expected that. Seeing her like that, I felt bad for being harsh with my words. "I'm sorry for being too harsh. Let's both do our best starting today," I said, and Hannah smiled brightly. From that day on, she seemed like a changed person, engaging in her work and actively progressing tasks. "I'll do that," she offered. "We need to make quite a lot of copies, though." "That's fine. I'll do it." She willingly took on even the tedious tasks. Of course, there was no longer a cell phone on her desk. My colleagues were also surprised by her transformation. It was some time later when I overheard a rumor. I heard that Hannah was going to marry the son of a business partner. I thought, oh, is that so, but didn't pay much attention to it. After a while, Hannah rarely showed up at work. I assumed she was busy with wedding preparations or something, as she had applied for leave, so I just focused on my own tasks without much concern. But then, the problem happened suddenly. While I was working at my desk, Mr. Johnson tapped me on the shoulder. "Can you come to my office right away?" Yes, okay." I wondered what Mr. Johnson himself wanted to talk about. His face was expressionless. I had a bad feeling. I hurried to Mr. Johnson's office, sweating nervously, and knocked on the door. "Come in." As I slowly opened the door, there sat Mr. Johnson with a stern face. Stunned, I heard Mr. Johnson say, "You really harassed my daughter, didn't you?" I was confused. "I'm sorry, but what are you talking about?" According to Mr. Johnson, I had made her suddenly do a large amount of copying during work as a form of harassment. He said that because of this, she recently became afraid to come to the company and couldn't show her face. It seemed Hannah had taken my scolding more seriously than I thought. So that's what it was. I felt betrayed. The copying was a task she volunteered for herself. I didn't request it to her. I tried to explain the truth to Mr. Johnson, but he wouldn't listen. Eventually, I was demoted to a factory in the countryside. Angry and misunderstood, I thought about quitting the job, but with no special skills and unsure about finding another job quickly, I ended up heading to the new location 2 weeks later. At the new factory I was transferred to, I ended up being assigned a wide range of tasks, from production work to administrative duties. It's significantly harder than when I was at the headquarters. However, there was a silver lining. The factory had many older women who were all friendly and made the job much easier. In particular, I got along well with Mary, a lady in her 50s who worked part-time. Mary appeared to be quite a veteran part-time employee, very knowledgeable about the company. She seemed to be aware of not only the factory's workings but also those of the headquarters. Tired, hut here, this is juice I made from oranges grown in my garden, and I also made some cheesecakes. Please have some. Mary always brought me drinks and snacks when I was working overtime. Well, that looks delicious. I'd like some too. Other part-timers, hungry from overtime, also gathered around. Not to be rude, but Mary was like a mother to everyone. Her calm and kind demeanor made her popular among other employees, and she even advised the younger temps on life matters. "Mary, I'm thinking about getting married. Can we talk for a bit?" Of course. So, who is she? Thanks to her, the factory had a very homely atmosphere. I was living a fulfilling, though challenging, life. Then, one day, something unexpected happened. Hannah, of all people, came to the factory. As soon as she saw me, she apologized, saying, "I'm really sorry." Her sudden appearance and immediate apology left everyone around us in a daze. It seemed like the factory workers didn't know she was Hannah. Confused, I just stared at her. Then Mary appeared behind me. Seeing Hannah, Mary seemed surprised and whispered, "Lucy." Then, like a mother, she stroked her head and said, "You've grown up so much." Had she worked at this factory before? Then, somewhat shyly, Hannah said, "It's been a long time, Mom." I was stunned, hearing that word. The employees around us were also shocked by her calling Mary Mom. We decided to talk in a separate room. Hannah, with tears in her eyes, kept apologizing, saying, "I'm really, really sorry for the trouble I caused." Then Mary asked her, "What's going on? What happened?" Hannah began to explain bit by bit. She didn't hold a grudge for being scolded by me. In fact, she was grateful for the strict guidance. I had a sick rabbit at home, so I installed a camera in my room to watch it constantly. I was so worried that I kept looking at it even at work, and if anything seemed wrong, I'd immediately text the vet. That's why I couldn't focus on work. After being scolded, I realized I couldn't keep this up while everyone else was working hard, so I left my rabbit with the vet. That's what it was all about. Finally, I understood why she was always looking at her cell phone. Then, I told my dad that being scolded at work was a wake-up call for me, but somehow he misunderstood and thought I was harassed by being made to do lots of copying. Once he gets something in his head, he won't listen to anyone. And she came to apologize because she was shocked to find out I had been transferred to the factory after she took a leave to care for her rabbit's surgery. That's when Mary spoke up as if she had realized something. "I see. It looks like I'll have to talk to him myself," she murmured. It turned out, Mary and Mr. Johnson were once married. However, they had divorced about 10 years ago. Mary originally worked at the headquarters but moved to this factory after their divorce. Mary quickly contacted Mr. Johnson, and the next day he showed up at the factory. Looking awkward, he greeted Mary with a long time, "No see." Mary retorted, "You told me to leave the company and our daughter to you, but was it a mistake to trust you?" Mr. Johnson visibly shrank. It was my first time seeing him like this. Watching him, Mary said with exasperation, "You're still so stubborn and set in your ways." I then learned another shocking fact. Our company was originally managed by Mary as an executive. I joined after she had left her position, so I had no idea. Mary sighed, "You don't listen to your daughter or your employees. You can't run a company like that. You've always been like this, not listening to others." Mr. Johnson muttered, "Quiet down," unable to argue back. Finally, Mary asked, "If you plan to keep doing as you please, should I take over the company and Lucy, what will you do?" Mr. Johnson tearfully pleaded, "No, I'll do it." Hannah, who had been silent until then, took her father's hand and said, "Dad, I know you care about me. You were always kind and bought me everything. Of course, I love you, but..." Then she looked down, blushing slightly, and said, "I just want to marry someone I love," looking into Mr. Johnson's eyes and then, for some reason, glancing at me. Mary again stroked her head. Mr. Johnson looked down and murmured, "Understood." The discussion concluded for the time being, and the next day, work at the factory resumed. I thought I would continue working at the factory, but a week later, I was ordered to return to the headquarters. It was quite sudden and busy, but I was happy to return, as I preferred working at the headquarters. Right after returning, she invited me to a coffee shop during lunch break. As soon as we sat down, she said, "I'm truly sorry for what happened." To her, I said, "You don't have to apologize so many times. Let's look forward to working together again." She insisted on treating me as an apology and paid the bill. As I thanked her and began to walk away, I said, "Thank you for the meal." That's when she pulled my hand and said, "Wait." Confused, I stopped, and she blushed, saying, I like you. I have feelings for you," while looking down. What? I was flustered by her sudden confession, to which she continued, "I have a request. Would you go out with me? I refused the marriage because I fell for you. Is that okay?" Pleading earnestly. Honestly, at that time, I didn't have romantic feelings for her, so we decided to start as friends. However, it didn't take long for us to grow close, and I quickly became attracted to her childlike charm and innocence. Soon, I confessed my feelings, and we started dating. About a month after dating Lucy, I was called to Mr. Johnson's office again. As I entered, he said, "I hear you're dating my daughter," and I nervously wondered what I would be reprimanded for this time. Mr. Johnson said, "I want you to work harder because I'm entrusting my daughter to you." He continued, "If you're willing, would you become a full-time employee? You're well regarded by other employees in the HR department, and I would like you to help with management in the future." "Yes, thank you," I replied, feeling like I was in a dream. Since then, I've been working even harder as a full-time employee, continuing my smooth relationship with Lucy and regularly updating Mary. Mary, preferring the factory environment, continued working there as a part-timer. A lot happened in a short time, but now I'm very happy. I look forward to living fulfilling days, both in my work and personal life. In a noisy office filled with the sounds of ringing phones and conversations, I, John, was busily working as usual. Shoot, the time for the business meeting is getting close. I need to leave as soon as I finish this quote. Yes, don't. I hurriedly clicked the print button on my computer screen and went to collect the printed document from the printer. Then, I quickly took it to my boss, Michelle. "Michelle, could you sign the estimate on the quote, please?" My female boss, seated at her desk, is named Michelle. She's top in sales performance in the company and was promoted to manager at the young age of 32. Michelle, a graduate from an elite university, is competent and expected to be a candidate for the board of directors. Not only is she intelligent, but she's also beautiful with good looks and has a great figure, though she rarely smiles and is very strict with her subordinates. Especially with me, I feel the cold shoulder more than with other colleagues. Michelle silently took the quote from me, glanced at it, and frowned. The next moment, she yelled loud enough to echo across the floor. "Come on, there's an extra zero. Redo it." Oh, you're right. Sorry. Really, at your age, making such a simple mistake, you're hopeless. That's why you're still a contract worker in your 40s. She said that with a look of disbelief and sighed. As a contract worker, you don't get bonuses, right? At this rate, you might never get married. I was even criticized about things unrelated to work. She's always like this. Ever since she found out I'm a middle school graduate, she's been looking down on me. I hated it, but I couldn't talk back to my boss, even though she's younger. So, I had no choice but to listen silently. The fact that I seem unlikely to get married is true. At 45, I've never had a girlfriend. With neither good looks nor money, I've led a life that's far from being popular. Michelle, beautiful and elite, could never understand this indescribable loneliness. While thinking about this, I bitterly corrected the quote and finally got Michelle to sign it, then headed to the client. The result of the business meeting I went to with such enthusiasm was not good. Sigh, what's wrong with me? I'm always like this. My sales performance is the lowest in the company, and it's a wonder I haven't been fired. As a contract worker, I'm always nervous about losing my job. Not being a permanent employee at this age is probably due to my educational background. Maybe I should have pursued a career as a craftsman. I reflect on my life with regret. I could perhaps become a permanent employee at a small business, but working for a small, unstable company seems riskier than being a contract worker at a large corporation. In this world, I'm grateful just to have a job. When I returned to the office from the business meeting, it was already past regular working hours and most of the employees had left. I went back to my desk and started working on the report for the day. After that, I prepared the quote and materials for tomorrow's meeting and shut down my computer. It was already past 10 p.m. Here I am, late again. As I gathered my things and left the office, the stars were shining in the sky. Today is Friday, the eve of the weekend. I thought about going somewhere to eat and drink alone, as it would just be lonely going home, so I headed to the downtown area. Walking down the street lined with bars and pubs, I passed groups of college students, groups of office workers, and many couples. I'm so envious. I wish I had a partner too. Even with a small salary and being belittled by my boss, just being with a partner would surely be healing. But unfortunately, I don't have such a person in my life. Not even friends to go out drinking with. Sigh. With a heavy sigh, I entered a nearby pub alone. "Welcome, are you dining alone?" "Yes, alone." "Please take a seat at the counter." I was led to the counter and ordered a small drink set for one, a draft beer and a few other snacks. Perhaps because it's Friday night, the pub was full of groups of office workers, all chatting and complaining about work. I drank my beer while watching them from the corner of my eye. Drinking alone, with no one to complain about work to, is just boring. After drinking for about an hour, I left the place. Across the street, pink neon lights were shining. I saw a couple walking arm in arm. Feeling envious, I glanced at them and recognized the woman. Isn't that? It was my boss, Michelle. The man with her was probably in his 60s, with gray hair. Could he be Michelle's partner? Such an age difference, I wondered. That's when it happened. Let go of me. Michelle's voice sounded distressed. What's the harm? You're not some young girl. No need to play hard to get. The man was forcibly holding her shoulder, trying to pull her into a nearby store. Stop it, please. She was struggling to shake off his grip. I instinctively approached them and grabbed the man's arm. Stop it. Can't you see she's uncomfortable? Who are you? Mind your own business. The man glared at me. His face was red and he smelled like alcohol. It's my business. I'm her subordinate. A subordinate? Huh? A guy your age working under a woman like her? Huh? How does it feel being bossed around by a younger woman? The man leaned close to my face, smirking. We're not talking about that right now. Let her go or I'll call the cops. I raised my voice, and people passing by started to gather around, watching from a distance. Noticing them, the man clicked his tongue. Humph. Just kidding. Who'd take an older woman like you seriously? The man, grumbling in defeat and ignoring his own age, left the scene. Michelle, are you okay? When I asked, Michelle came staggering over, her hand trembling as she tightly grasped the sleeve of my suit. John, thank you, she said in a faint voice. I'm really grateful for your help. I was just coming back from a reunion when this stranger suddenly started bothering me. It was scary. The usual strict and assertive Michelle seemed so fragile today. Then she said, if it's all right with you, can I buy you a drink as a thank you? Her offer surprised me. Why would she, who usually finds something to criticize about me, invite me out for drinks? What's gotten into her? I really don't need a thank you, but she insisted. I won't feel right if I don't. Don't be shy, let's go, and grabbed my arm with both hands, pulling me along. Despite her usual forceful manner, I couldn't help feeling a rush from the sudden closeness. Surely, I couldn't be attracted to such a difficult boss, no matter how beautiful she is. I chided myself inwardly and chuckled at my own thoughts. Then, led by her, I found myself in a small bar. Order whatever you like, she said, and I ordered a bourbon on the rocks. She chose a cocktail. I was just in the mood for more drinks. I feel like I need more alcohol tonight. She smiled slightly, and I asked her, did something happen at the reunion? Nothing major, really. She showed a faintly pained expression, her eyes looking off into the distance. I stayed silent, and she continued. The guy I dated in high school, I found out he's married now. She said this almost like a whisper, then sighed deeply. Do you still have feelings for him, Michelle? I guess. I've always loved him, even after we broke up. You know how it is, right? Your first great love always stays with you somewhere in your heart. She took her cocktail glass and gulped it down. But Michelle, you seem like you'd be popular. Aren't there plenty of good men around? When I asked, she gave a bitter smile. Please, it's not like that. There's no way. I don't meet anyone, and even when I do, they all leave soon. Why's that? I wondered internally if maybe the men realize her difficult personality and leave because of it. But it turned out to be something else. Actually, I'm taking care of my mother at home. I put her in daycare while I'm at work, and I take care of her all night, so I can't go out. I don't have time for dates. She continued. Her mother was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's the year she got my job. Her father and grandparents had already passed away when she was young, so she's been working and caring for her alone. Any romantic prospects end quickly because she can go on dates due to caregiving. I might never get married. It's so frustrating and lonely to see many married people at the reunion, but I want to take care of my mother myself, and my emotions are all mixed up. She stared at her glass as she spoke. I understood her feelings all too well. I get it, Michelle. My dad had an accident when I was in middle school and became partially paralyzed. I've been his caregiver ever since. As I said this, Michelle looked up at me, surprised. My mom wasn't around, so after my dad needed care, I had to start working right after middle school. My grandma would take care of him during the day, but I took over on weekends and at night. I couldn't go out, just worked and cared for him for decades, and by the time he passed, I was already over 40, so I never really experienced youth or love. After I finished, Michelle suddenly started crying. What's wrong, Michelle? John, I'm sorry for being so harsh on you until now. Michelle apologized, wiping her eyes with her palm. I've been irritable because of the caregiving stress, and I took it out on you. I hated myself for it but couldn't stop. But hearing your story, I realize I was really wrong. Seeing her tearful, somehow she seemed adorable, and all the resentment I had built up against her disappeared. I understood the strain of caregiving all too well and could empathize with her lack of mental peace. And I had to admit, I am a bit clueless and prone to annoying mistakes. It's okay, Michelle. I gently patted her back. You know, we're kind of in similar situations. If it's okay with you, would you like to drink together again? If you're worried about your mom, I can come to your place. Let's have a drink at home. When I smiled, she looked surprised and then smiled happily. I'd appreciate that. She firmly grasped my extended hand. Michelle, has your mom gone to bed already? Yes, we had dinner together earlier, and she's probably asleep now. Oh, I got some snacks today. Your favorite cheese and crackers. Saying this, Michelle brought out a dish of cheese and crackers. It looks delicious. I found a rare drink at the liquor store today, so I bought it. Oh, that drink. I just saw a feature about it on TV and was thinking about trying it. Ever since the night I helped my manager, I've been occasionally visiting her place with a bottle of alcohol. We've been enjoying drinks together, with me bringing wine or sake, and pairing them with snacks prepared by Michelle. We've become good drinking buddies. Since we started having these home drinking sessions, Michelle has become much more relaxed at work. Well, my mistakes are still the same. Watching her enjoy her drink at the living room table, I thought she looked really cute. Thinking about what drink to bring next, I felt happy spending enjoyable moments with Michelle. My name is Bob. I'm a newbie who just started working this spring. My baby face is a concern. I get carded when buying alcohol, and at work, I'm treated like a mascot and still seen as a kid. I believe the only way to change this situation is to achieve results at work, so I've been working hard, staying late every day. This small company of about 10 employees was founded by the president, who worked tirelessly to build it up, mainly focusing on internet sales. That day, like usual, I worked until the last train and hurried to the station. The bustling downtown area gets brighter and more crowded as the night goes on. There are lots of men and women you wouldn't normally see. There are guys who look like nightclub hosts trying to attract customers, and women in flashy, revealing clothes walking quickly. I'm not comfortable with this atmosphere. It feels so alien and even scary to me. I just want to get through it quickly. As I'm running at full speed, I hear a voice say, "Ouch, I had bumped into someone. Sorry, I was in a hurry." I apologize and see that it's a group of tough-looking guys. This is bad. I instantly felt that. The guys were smirking at me. "I'm really sorry. Excuse me." "Hey, wait up, man. You think that's the end of it?" As I try to walk away, one grabs me by the collar. "Onan, what a mess. I'm done for." I got punched. They kept hitting me as if they were in a really bad mood. It hurts. Pain shoots through my body. But after a while, either my brain numbed or I stopped feeling the pain. "Police, over here, they're fighting." A girl's voice sounded from afar. The tough guys panicked at the sound and scattered in all directions like baby spiders. Ah, it's finally over. I tried to get up, but my body wouldn't cooperate. As I staggered to my feet, the girl offered her hand. There's a park right there. Sit on a bench. I'll go buy some antiseptic. With that, she ran off. Lying on the park bench with my eyes closed, she returned with a bag. Use this. She handed me a wet handkerchief, antiseptic, and band-aids. Even in the dim park, her bright blonde hair and torn, distressed shorts stood out, giving her a bit of a tough look. I'm sorry for making you buy all this. I'll pay you. No, it's fine for now. Take care of your wounds first. Okay. I wiped my bloodied mouth with the handkerchief. Lucky they ran off when I shouted police. I didn't actually call them though. If I did, they might have hit you more. She laughed. I usually ignore fights, but I couldn't stand seeing high school kids getting beaten. It's dangerous for you to walk around at this hour. I was surprised. Wait, she thinks I'm underage. No, I'm not a kid. Just coming back from work. Really? How old are you? 22. What? Older than me? Well, I helped for nothing. She burst out laughing. Not at all. Thank you for helping me. You're welcome. What about you, walking alone at this time? You're not running away from home, right? No way, I'd never run away. She said, laughing. Lisa Brown was her name, a cheerful girl who laughs a lot. She looked a bit rough around the edges but was fun to be with. We ended up talking in the park for a long time and even exchanged contacts. I missed the last train and had to walk home, but talking to her eased the shock and pain of being beaten. Since the next day, my routine was the same, work and catching the late train home. But one thing had changed. I started exchanging texts with Lisa. My dad, he's so arrogant and annoying. He might be important at work, but I can't respect him. He's never home. Lisa would sometimes complain like that. Your dad's busy with work, huh? Yeah, he's a president. Really? I replied, then suddenly thought. Wait, the president of my company. His name is Brown too. Could it be? With that thought, I casually asked. Your dad's company, what is it? I texted her the name of the company where I work. Yay, that's right. Wait, how do you know? I couldn't believe it. I was shocked by her response. I never imagined Lisa was the daughter of my company's president. When I mentioned it, surprisingly, Lisa seemed pleased. Later, I was called in by the president. And President Brown said with a smile, "Don't be nervous, take a seat. I hear you're close with my daughter, Lisa." I had been worried about getting in trouble, but his cheerful manner suggested otherwise. In fact, Mr. Brown seemed happy. Lisa doesn't have many friends because of her personality. Please keep being good friends with her. I was relieved, though a bit taken aback. I had been worried about accusations of seducing his daughter, but that was needless. Afterward, perhaps because her father approved, Lisa started contacting me more. Bob, let's hang out. How about karaoke? Do you know what's trendy? I've been curious about the cake buffet at that store. Let's go together. Our goal is to eat 10 pieces each. Because of Mr. Brown's approval, I could go out with her during lunch and return a bit late without worry, and if she invited me for dinner, I could leave work early without any issue. It seems Mr. Brown was right about her having few friends. She often called me out to different places to eat or hang out. She might be self-centered, but not a bad person. She looks a bit rough, though. It was fun to hang out with her, but there were problems. She called me out so frequently. I could hardly work. Tasks I planned to complete with overtime just piled up. But since it was president approved, even my boss couldn't reprimand me. My boss and colleagues just made bitter faces, silently letting me go when she called. Honestly, it wasn't a happy situation. I couldn't work properly, and I was teased as the future president just for seeing the president's daughter. I didn't want the president's seat. I wanted to work hard and achieve results first. I disliked being talked about like that. "Bob, let's go to a movie. The one I wanted to see has started." Lisa invited me as usual. I usually accepted, but this time I declined. There was an important meeting the next day. "Sorry, but I need to prepare for tomorrow's meeting tonight." "Oh, I see. Okay, let's hang out another time." Lisa backed off easily. I didn't need to accept reluctantly. Feeling relieved, I could finally focus on work. That's it. I can just sane it for a while. I declined her invitations the next day and the day after, citing work. When I started on the accumulated work, I was alarmed by how much there was. I need to hurry. Before I knew it, I had declined her invitations for a week straight. Then, the following week, Mr. Brown suddenly called me in. "Bob, it seems you're avoiding my daughter. Your attitude is too blatant. Quite a terrible thing to do." Well, it's fine. From tomorrow, you'll work in the warehouse, so you don't need to come to this main office." What? I was caught off guard by the sudden news. I remembered what the office lady had said before. When the company wants to let an employee go, they make conditions tough so they'll quit on their own. And there were rumors that the warehouse was exactly that kind of place. Why? Why is this happening all of a sudden? Come to think of it, I hadn't heard from Lisa since I started turning down her invitations. I didn't pay attention to it because I was busy with work, but if you don't want to hang out, I don't need it. Is that what you mean? Probably, she told her father to send me to the warehouse. When I realized that, anger welled up inside me. What a selfish way to behave. Mixing business with personal issues, no less. But then, I started to think that working in this warehouse might actually be better than those days when I couldn't focus on work because of Lisa. I decided to make the best of my new job. Maybe a few weeks passed. I was working comfortably. The shipping and management tasks in the warehouse, finding ways to improve and increase efficiency, I found a certain satisfaction in these. No matter the situation, changing my perspective helped me find motivation in my work. It's all about attitude. Then, one day, I received a text from Lisa for the first in a long time. She didn't contact me since I had declined her movie invitation, and I didn't contact her either. What could she possibly want now? Thinking this, I opened the text and was speechless. "Help me." That was all Lisa's text said. What does she mean? Thinking it was some kind of prank, I simply replied, "What's wrong?" But even after 1-2 hours, there was no reply from her. Maybe I'll try calling her during lunch break. Just as I was thinking this, Mr. Brown suddenly came into the office. "Bob, are you here?" "Mr. Brown, what's going on?" "Bob, help Lisa." Mr. Brown looked pale as he handed me his smartphone. There was an email on the screen with an attached image. "Lisa, she's been kidnapped." She looked like she was about to cry, but there seemed to be no injuries. The text read, "We'll contact again." What's this about? Lisa apparently left home after a heated argument with her father, Mr. Brown. It seems the argument started over my being transferred to warehouse duties. The heated exchange led Lisa to storm out of the house. A few hours later, Mr. Brown received a text. "I've been told not to call the cops. It might be wrong to ask you, but please help Lisa. I'm begging you." Mr. Brown, with tears in his eyes, begged me. The text from Lisa read, "Help me. It wasn't a prank, then. Things have gotten serious." I rushed out of the office. I tried replying to Lisa. "I'm coming to help." Where are you? A few minutes later, I got a reply. The red abandoned building in the downtown area. I forwarded the text to Mr. Brown and ran to the location. I recognized the place immediately. I always passed that building on my way to the main office. Lisa. I burst through the door. Inside, several rough-looking men and Lisa, seated on a chair, were present. The men approached with angry faces. What do you want? You looking for trouble, huh? I had rushed in without any weapon. I had no plan of action. This is bad. I'm going to get beaten up. The men approached menacingly, and I felt fear. I wanted to run. But if I ran, Lisa would be left behind. A desperate situation. Just as I closed my eyes, accepting my fate, I heard police sirens outside. The sound stopped right in front of the building. To our surprise, police officers burst in. Freeze! Give up! The men were quickly subdued. Lisa and I were rescued in no time. The police are incredible. It was Mr. Brown who called the police. My forwarded text helped him inform the police of the exact location. Mr. Brown tearfully embraced Lisa. Then, he deeply apologized to me. The next day, it was revealed that the whole incident was a staged kidnapping by Lisa. What the heck? Lisa wanted to trouble Mr. Brown for sending me to the warehouse. I thought it was because I kept refusing your invitations that Lisa told Mr. Brown to punish me. No way, I didn't say anything to Dad. I just told him we hadn't met recently because you were busy, and he misunderstood it. He got mad thinking it was wrong to avoid his daughter, resulting in the warehouse transfer. I didn't know about it and argued with him over such a cruel act. Sorry, I just wanted to teach Dad a little lesson. It seems Lisa was inwardly panicking as her father, not I, was supposed to come to the scene. On reflection, it was odd that she could text while being kidnapped. I couldn't think that far at the time. But well, since Dad begged you, Bob, with tears, I'll forgive him. Lisa casually brushed off the incident, but I couldn't help thinking it was a serious matter, relieved that it wasn't a real kidnapping. Lisa had to explain everything to the police and apparently got a good warning. Mr. Brown also offered a formal apology. He admitted to acting childishly out of love for his daughter and for his selfish misunderstanding, deeply apologized. He even suggested I return to my original department. But I declined. I was starting to find the warehouse work interesting and was happy about the transfer. Lisa apologized for repeatedly inviting me without considering my circumstances. It's okay to say no when you can't. I'd be happy if you'd hang out with me again, though, she said modestly. Of course, that was okay. I had fun when we hung out. Actually, Bob, I have something to discuss with you. What is it? Would you consider becoming the next president and, eventually, Lisa's husband? What? Hey, what are you saying? Lisa blushed and got angry at her father's sudden proposal. I smiled and said, I'll pass on becoming the next president. I'm not cut out for that, but I'd like to start as friends with Lisa, just as equals, not as the president's daughter or your employee. That would make me happy. Both Lisa and Mr. Brown laughed and said, we'd appreciate that. Thus, my eventful saga came to a close, marking the beginning of a new chapter. Tomorrow looks to be a busy day. Both my professional and personal life seem promising. Someday, I want to confidently see Mr. Brown. By then, I might even be regarded as more mature by those around me. You look like a mess at the bottom, haha. Emma said that, and, while I was still on duty, she poured the can of beer she had onto my head and laughed loudly. My name is John. My parents divorced when I was just beginning to understand things, and I was taken in by my mother, growing up in a single-parent household. I still don't know the reason for their divorce. I just vividly remember my mother crying on the night my father left. So, I never thought to ask about the cause of the divorce. Being in a single-parent household meant that my mother had to earn the amount that a father in a typical family would bring home all by herself. My mother worked multiple part-time jobs, tirelessly providing for me to have a comfortable life from morning till night. Seeing my mother's efforts, even though I was young, I felt that I couldn't waste her hard work. I diligently focused on my studies, even if it meant sacrificing things I wanted. I secretly wished to play soccer, but I feared it would affect my academics, so I never joined the club. Looking back, I realized that we didn't have the financial means to afford soccer gear like spikes or uniforms, so not joining was the right decision. I didn't buy reference books or attend supplemental classes like the other kids around me, but thanks to my natural intelligence and exceptional memory, I consistently ranked at the top of my class throughout my 6 years of elementary school. However, my mother, despite juggling multiple part-time jobs, never became a contract employee or received promotions or bonuses. Our life never improved. So, even as I entered junior high school, our family remained poor. In elementary school, I wore tattered clothes because we had no school uniforms. By the time I reached the upper grades, my classmates and teachers had figured out that I was from a poor family. Fortunately, in junior high school, most students wore school uniforms and carried designated school bags, which spared me from being singled out as poor in public. One day, during my second year of junior high, as the end of middle school approached, Emma, the most popular girl not only in our class but in the entire grade, approached me and said, "You're John, right?" Well, yes. Since I attended a different elementary school in a different district, I struggled to fit in from the beginning and had no friends, spending my time focused on my studies. At that time, of all people, I was approached by the popular girl, Emma, so I couldn't hide my nervousness. Whether she noticed my state or not, Emma continued without any concern. "John, how much do you usually study?" "Well, I arrive at school as soon as it opens, do some preview for the day. Then after school, I review the material before going home, and I keep studying until bedtime. That's the routine." "Wow, that's impressive. So, is that why you're so smart? Your name is always at the top of the test rankings, but I had no idea what kind of person you were, so I was curious." Saying that, Emma, who laughed, was cuter than any other girl I had met so far. From that day on, Emma started visiting me almost every day, saying she wanted me to teach her. Gradually, we moved beyond just studying, and we began talking about various topics, including life and relationships. As we moved up to the third year and ended up in the same class, we decided to start dating. I never imagined that I would have a girlfriend during my middle school years, especially not before making friends, and the fact that she was Emma was beyond my expectations. However, I always kept in mind that I couldn't let my studies suffer just because I had a girlfriend, so my grades didn't drop. Our relationship was going well, but it came to an abrupt end one day. On a holiday, we were going on our first date as a couple. Since it was a day off and we would be meeting in casual clothes instead of our uniforms, I wanted to decline, but I reluctantly agreed, thinking that Emma was attracted to my intelligence. However, when Emma arrived late at our meeting place and saw me, her reaction was different. "Sorry for being late," she began, but then she looked at me in shock. "What's with that outfit?" It was understandable. Because, at that moment, I was wearing a tattered t-shirt with a stretched-out neckline and shabby jeans, a far cry from a stylish look. However, I couldn't help but think if there was some way I could avoid the situation and said, "Well, you know, I'm not really interested in clothes. Besides, I have this thing for studying, and I don't really go out." Nevertheless, Emma didn't seem convinced, and she said, "I had a vague idea, but I didn't think you were this cool." On that day, Emma was shining from head to toe, and everything she wore was branded. Come to think of it, Emma's family was wealthy, and she was what you'd call a CEO's daughter, I recalled. Recognizing how shabby my own appearance was in comparison, I was overwhelmed by embarrassment. I can imagine walking next to a guy like this. I'm sorry, but I can't date you anymore. Goodbye. With those words, Emma walked away, and we broke up. Life at school after that was hell. Thanks to Emma, who was at the top of the social hierarchy, my family's poverty was exposed to the entire grade. But that wasn't the worst part. With Emma targeting me as her enemy, people around her began to follow suit, mocking me and eventually subjecting me to considerable harassment and exclusion. According to Emma, it was payback for her humiliation. By looking down on me, the top student in the grade, she aimed to elevate herself and maintain her own status. However, I found it terrifying how her act of revenge escalated to involve the entire grade. The harassment I endured was relentless and took various forms, such as Emma opening windows wide, saying, "The air gets bad when John is around," hiding my textbooks and indoor shoes, and mocking me with comments like, did you lose them? Well, just buy new ones. Oh, it's sorry, my bad. You can't afford it, can you? The list of harassment was endless. And it continued until graduation. Despite the challenging circumstances, the reason I kept going to school without giving up was my determination not to waste my mother's efforts. So, I focused even more on my studies, determined to protect my position as the top student, and I maintained that position by a wide margin. So, with that in mind, I occasionally gave myself a pep talk to overcome my fears and somehow managed to graduate. After graduation, while I did have the desire to go to high school and continue my studies, I thought that pushing my mother any further would eventually take a toll on her health. So, I abandoned my desire to study and decided to work as an employee at a hotel. My workplace was a well-known luxury hotel, and thanks to my mother's connection with the hotel's president, I was given the opportunity to work there, despite having only completed middle school. Mr. Smith, the CEO, was an exceptionally capable individual who not only managed this hotel, but also several others. Furthermore, he was incredibly strict. This wasn't because I was still a child with only a middle school education. It was Mr. Smith's management philosophy and the key to his success, as the senior employees explained. So, no matter how much I was scolded, I continued to work without getting discouraged. Being a luxury hotel, there was a lot to learn, especially regarding guest etiquette. However, with everything drilled into me, I gradually stopped receiving scoldings. John sure has a good memory, right, Mr. Smith? If he couldn't handle this much, he wouldn't even be worth considering. No matter how much I grew, Mr. Smith never once praised me. However, I remained determined to redirect the passion I had devoted to my studies into my work and dedicated my entire life to it. Sometimes, I made mistakes, and I faced shouts from other employees, but I never backed down and wholeheartedly embraced the challenges. One day, when Mr. Smith and I were standing at the front desk together, he muttered as if to himself, "Maybe we should start another hotel." Hearing that, I silently thought that I should learn from his spirit of taking on new challenges and resolved to work even harder. And so, 15 years passed, and it was my 30th birthday. As I stood at the front desk, Emma entered through the hotel's automatic sliding doors, with a man by her side. While there was a possibility they were married given their ages, I couldn't see any ring on Emma's left ring finger, so the man was likely her boyfriend. As Emma approached, my heart raced, and my forehead broke into a sweat. Finally, they reached me. "Hey, isn't that John?" "Oh, Emma, it's been a while. I can't believe you're working here, you, who was so poor and only had a middle school education." With those words, just like in the past, Emma mocked me and then boasted about her boyfriend, who was an elite employee at a large company and had an annual income of $200,000 as they checked in. Although I had to carry the guest luggage to their room, I did so reluctantly, without showing any emotion on my face. I endured a stream of insults on the way but pretended not to care. Meeting Emma and being reminded of my unpleasant past on my birthday was truly disheartening. Even though I was at work, I couldn't help but feel a little down, and my concentration wavered. Several hours later, during my break, Mr. Smith came into the break room and said he wanted to talk. After the break, when I returned to work, Emma appeared in the lobby again. Blushing and with slightly unsteady steps, it was clear that she had been drinking somewhere. That is typical Emma. I knew that dealing with her would be even more troublesome if she got drunk. Sitting heavily on the sofa in the lobby, Emma, holding a can of beer in her right hand, took a swig and then, upon spotting me, started to meddle as usual. "So, I wanted to ask, how long have you been working here?" "Since right after middle school." "Huh, that explains why nobody talks about you. I was actually looking forward to gossiping about you and your family in high school." "Haha, stop it." All I could muster was a dry smile in response. I didn't want to chat too much since I was on duty, and even though I knew her, I wished she would just go away. Still, Emma seemed intent on venting her frustration that had been pent up for 15 years, and she didn't let the conversation drop. If I had known a lowlife like you worked here, I wouldn't have stayed. This is the worst. Why are you at the front desk? You're more suited to be a cleaning staff." I thought Emma wouldn't stop even if other guests came, so I left the front desk and approached her. "Please keep your voice down. There are other guests around." "What? Why should I listen to you?" The next moment, Emma stood up and, saying "You don't deserve to wear such a nice uniform," poured her half-finished beer over my head. "There you go. A ragged look suits the likes of you." Emma laughed loudly. She looked just like a witch. Seeing this, other employees hurried over to me. But I stopped them. "I'm fine." "But you're soaking wet." "Yeah, I'll go change real quick." I glanced at Emma, saying "You've had too much to drink," and left. After changing, I returned to the front desk, and Emma was still sitting on the sofa. That's when her boyfriend came in, excitedly saying, "There's an awesome car parked outside. It's black and looks really slick. Must be custom made." "Really? I won't be surprised unless it's a luxury car. My dad has tons of them." They bantered, looking outside through the automatic doors. Then, several men in suits got out of the luxury car. Their suits looked so expensive that I thought some VIP must be staying here, and watched them enter. However, the group in suits headed straight for the front desk. Stopping in front of me, among the 3 employees, they said, "Mr. President, John, we've come to pick you up." Huh? I was initially bewildered, unable to grasp the situation. But there was no one behind me. So, it seemed the words were directed at me. Then Emma came from behind, saying, "What? This guy's the president? Guys, you've got the wrong person. He's just a poor lowlife who barely got a job at this nice hotel because he's doomed to never achieve anything more." The men looked confused at her drunken rant. "Do you know her?" one of them asked me, and I replied, "She's an old middle school classmate, sort of." "Sort of. Don't get cocky just because you were bullied." Just as Emma lunged forward, Mr. Smith appeared behind her, gently holding her shoulder, and said, "Please calm down." "Mr. Smith, what's this all about?" "Actually, I've been keeping a secret until your birthday today. I'm planning to entrust you with the new wing opening next month." I remembered when I first joined the company, Mr. Smith had muttered about starting a new hotel. When the new hotel was confirmed, I admired how amazing he was. I never dreamed he would entrust it to me. I've always been impressed with your work since you joined right out of middle school. Choosing to work at such a young age was normal in my generation, but it took courage for yours. Yet, you made up your mind and have been a great help here. I was tough on you because I wanted you to aim higher. I thought you were capable enough to handle the new project. Mr. Smith then held my hand and said with a kind expression, "I'm counting on you, and happy birthday." I couldn't stop my tears. I felt recognized by Mr. Smith, who had always been strict, and for the first time, I thought all my hard work had paid off. After gently patting my shoulder, Mr. Smith turned to Emma and said, "I hate to break it to you, young lady, but your father's company, the Williams Group, might be facing some tough times ahead." What? Nonsense. Dad wouldn't mess up. This is so irritating. Let's go. With those bitter words, Emma left with her boyfriend. Later, I was taken out for a meal by Mr. Smith. There, I learned that the Mr. Smith's company had business dealings with the Williams Group. However, the Williams Group was famously involved in tax evasion in the area, and upon learning this, Mr. Smith immediately ceased all transactions. A few days later, I saw on the news that the tax evasion by the Williams Group had been exposed. Emma's father was arrested. Their company went bankrupt, and I heard Emma was left with a significant debt. From what I've been told, she's now wearing ragged clothes and trying her best in various ways. If I see her again, I might treat her to a meal, calling it a continuation of the date we never had. Looking in the mirror, I tightened my tie, gave my cheek a slap, and pumped myself up, thinking, I'm the president starting today. My husband is a division manager at a major corporation, quite a different world from yours, a middle school dropout, right? Linda, who was my classmate in middle school, said this to me after we had exchanged various words. Upon hearing this, I replied, well, he's getting fired tomorrow, you know. What? Linda uttered in surprise, turning her gaze towards her husband Mike, who was present. This created a scenario where a woman who had spoken rudely to me without knowing my true identity was now aware of her husband's impending dismissal. For Mike, who was unaware of the situation, this exchange must have been quite a shock. However, it was necessary to draw out the true feelings of the troublemaker who had been causing many people distress. As a result of our act, Mike, who misunderstood that he was being fired, began to dig his own grave with his subsequent actions. My name is Jack. I'm a 32-year-old man with a dream of living surrounded by a large family. I rent an apartment near downtown and live alone while working. I'm the CEO of a major corporation with about 7,200 employees. However, our company's employee count is not particularly high compared to other famous companies of the same scale. We have always focused on quality over quantity, which is why we have fewer employees compared to other major corporations. We are often underestimated by others, but our commitment to meticulous work and a customer-first philosophy has led to the company's rapid growth in recent years. Consequently, we plan to increase our workforce soon. Both my secretary Lisa and I are on the verge of being overwhelmed by the workload, so it seems unavoidable. The business is to the point where there's barely any time to rest. However, when I occasionally talk about my past, people are surprised. As a child, I was not an outstanding student. I was average in both academics and sports, and I wasn't a friendly type with many friends. So, in middle school, I thought I would just get a job at some company and live a normal corporate life. But, as a hobby, I started streaming videos, introducing interesting games, and doing playthroughs, which received a lot of responses from people. I decided to pursue that path. I developed simple gaming and learning apps and tried selling them, which became a big hit. Before I knew it, the company had grown significantly. So, when I meet classmates who knew me when I had to drop out of school in middle school, everyone is surprised. Of course, I am too. There was a time when both my parents were injured, and we temporarily fell into poverty. I never thought I would become a CEO back then. As the chill of winter began to ease, I drove my car, observing the swelling buds on the cherry trees, and headed to work. I parked my car in the parking lot and headed into the company with the other employees. Those around me yawning or engaged in small talk probably have no idea that I'm the CEO. I rarely show my face in front of the employees, so it's understandable. In a normal company, it would be unheard of for employees not to know their CEO's face. But our company is only a few years old, and I prefer to work rather than act as a typical CEO, so this is the situation. Back when I was an ordinary employee at a toxic company, I couldn't have imagined this. Distressed by my job at a toxic company, I resigned. Shortly thereafter, I chose to start my own business. Running the company isn't always smooth, but there's a lot of fulfillment, so I don't regret my past decisions. As I walked through the office corridors thinking this, I reached my office and noticed that my 20-something secretary wasn't there. I have a secretary named Lisa who helps me with my work, but she's been a bit under the weather for the past few days and is taking time off. She looked pale when I saw her yesterday, which worried me. If she's just not managing her health, I wouldn't be so concerned. I hope she's getting proper rest. I found myself muttering in concern for her, who wasn't here, as she looked quite unwell yesterday. If the reason for her rest was just poor health management, I probably wouldn't be this worried. She's not a child, so I don't usually fuss over her. However, the problem is that Lisa has recently been stalked by a strange male employee. She's modestly beautiful, so it's common for men to approach her, but this time the guy is particularly persistent in troubling her. Apparently, he always approaches her when she leaves work, follows her around, and has even sent expensive brand items to her home after figuring out where she lives. She's been a great help to me in various ways, so I want to do something for her. However, as the CEO, I can't just focus on that. Thinking about today's schedule, I decided to start working at the desk in the center of the room. I began organizing some documents and writing on those that needed filling out, but within a few minutes, my cell phone started ringing. Just as I was getting focused, this interruption came. I made a grim face and looked at the phone screen. The caller was a man of my age. He works in the sales department of a major corporate client, but lately, he's been calling me frequently, which is troubling. Again, unlike your company, I don't have time to waste, you know. Don't be so stiff. I'm your friend, right? This man, Ethan, on the phone, was my middle school classmate. I became friends with him, who was a delinquent back then, after I lectured him, and he oddly found me to be a reliable guy. Since then, we've continued this relationship, though he's a bit lax when it comes to company rules. Ethan's company manufactures gaming hardware and is a major company known to many. However, he's loved by people of all ages at his company and often makes these personal calls. I know I should lecture him properly at some point, but it seems he has a clear purpose today. Ethan, a big and friendly guy, is liked by everyone, but he has a habit of repeating the same story endlessly when he has a serious problem. So it's obvious. By the way, about the old lady in the neighborhood, the topic he brought up is one I've heard several times, so I already know the punchline. The old lady got a bad back and couldn't walk, so you carried her home on your back, and you were almost late for work, right? That's right. How did you know? I've heard the same story 5 times now. You must be mentally prepared by now. If you have a problem, just spit it out. Expressing my irritation, I spoke sharply, and he fell silent within a. After a moment, Ethan seemed ready and started talking about his problem. Apparently, he's having a tough time with a new supervisor at his workplace. This supervisor constantly belittles Ethan for being physically skilled but intellectually lacking and for being inferior to others because he's a middle school dropout. Ethan added that since he mentioned his educational background during his introduction, the supervisor's attitude has worsened. It seems the insults aren't just about Ethan. The supervisor also belittles his family, saying things like his parents must be worthless for raising a failure, and he'd like to see what kind of upbringing they gave. That stuff. Being a middle school dropout myself, I've experienced similar insults, but in Ethan's case, it's pretty severe. Those words could have broken a weaker person. I used to be a delinquent, so I think it's my fault I couldn't pursue further education. I've come to terms with it. But when it comes to my parents, I can't tolerate it, and I hate it. Got it. Let's meet at our usual pub tonight. I'll listen to the details there. I'll be waiting with beer and snacks like always. Thanks. Honestly, I'm quite busy with work, but this is for a friend. I'll have to work through my break to make time. That day, after somehow finishing my work, I headed to the usual pub. In the chilly night air, I opened the door and entered the establishment. Hey, over here. Looking around inside, I spotted Ethan. He was waving at me from a corner table. Thanks for coming. As I said on the phone, I've ordered food and drinks for us. Approaching him, I saw several empty beer mugs on the table. Tonight's on me, so eat and drink whatever you like. Of course, my time as a CEO isn't cheap, you know. Yeah, I know. We bantered lightly and started with a beer. Savoring the beer, I looked at Ethan. Ethan is straightforward, or simple, depending on how you look at it. Spending time talking with him is always comfortable because it doesn't require pondering complex matters. But I wasn't here just for small talk today, so I focused and stared at him intently. He seemed usual, but I could sense a hint of tension. So, what's this about? You wanted to discuss something with me, right? With that, I carefully observed his expressions and reactions as the conversation progressed. Well, actually, Ethan began, scratching his head and looking troubled. The harassing supervisor Ethan was dealing with was a man in his 30s named Mike, who had a wife named Linda. I was surprised to learn this because I also knew Linda. He's married, huh? I remembered her well from our school days when she often interfered with conversations I had with Ethan. She came from a wealthy family, always dressed in brand-name clothes, and was a woman of model-like appearance. Mike, her husband, seemed to be using his wife's wealth, wearing brand-name clothes, shoes, and watches. Not only does he target people with lower educational backgrounds, but he also goes after those he perceives as poor. It's tough. Ethan is mentally strong, so he seems okay for now, but such workplace occurrences are definitely not good. The real problem seemed to be with the other employees. Some of the more timid ones had apparently started seeing a doctor due to the harassment from their supervisor. The fact that Ethan is troubled by others' issues rather than his own really shows what a good person he has always been. I remember back in middle school, how he became the leader of the delinquents, unable to refuse those who were outcasts. I was a member of the school discipline committee back then, and the time I tried to set him on the right path led to quite a commotion. It's a nostalgic story, but reminiscing should be saved for another time. You were close with President Smith of our company, right? Mr. Smith, a good but stubborn and proud man, might be more receptive to you bringing up the issue. That's true. Since our companies have dealings, I'll subtly bring it up. We do have various transactions and owe a lot to each other. That's a relief. Man, I'm glad. I can handle these kinds of things alone. Seeing the problem possibly getting resolved, Ethan's face brightened up, and he enthusiastically began eating the snacks on the table. That's my share, you know. Don't sweat the small stuff. We can just order more. Shrugging, I grabbed the menu to refill our diminishing snacks. I ordered a hearty dish since I hadn't had dinner yet, and we updated each other on recent happenings. A few minutes later, while savoring the hamburger that was served, Ethan started a conversation saying, "By the way," and began talking about his plans for the coming weeks. Apparently, he was going to participate in a surfing competition overseas in a few months. It was an amateur event, so the skill level wasn't demanding, but he invited me to come and watch if I was free. The sea is beautiful, and you can see fish swimming even in the shallow waters. Pretty cool, huh? It's a tempting invitation, but it depends on my work schedule. As intriguing as it was, I couldn't easily commit considering my company's needs. Always the serious one. Well, you're the CEO, so I guess it can be helped. It was a crucial time for the company's growth, so I needed to carefully plan my schedule in consultation with Lisa. Months later, I didn't know if I could make it, but miraculously my schedule cleared up, and I was able to go support Ethan. Lisa, looking tired from the stalker issue, was also invited, and we boarded the same flight. We took a different flight from Ethan and planned to meet at the venue. After hours of travel, I was surprised to find Ethan had a lot of fans at the competition site. Who knew he was so popular? I always thought of Ethan as just an average-looking guy, but in swimwear, he looked quite different. His well-toned muscles probably appealed to those who liked that type. Every move he made was met with cheers. So, not wanting to monopolize a friend, after a brief greeting, I spent time strolling along the beach until the competition started. Just watching the beautiful sea with fish swimming was a surprisingly good change of pace. While enjoying the popsicle Lisa bought for me, I noticed a familiar face in the crowd. It was Linda, whom Ethan had mentioned a few months back. I hadn't seen her since graduation, but remembered her clearly for her model-like beauty. I wondered why she was here. As I gazed, puzzled, she seemed to notice me as well. It seems she remembered me too, as she quickly approached. "Why are you here, a dropout and a poor man?" Linda greeted me with words that would normally irritate anyone, but she was always like this in middle school, so I remained calm. I admit I was poor, but people don't stay the same forever, right? A guy like you, who used to hang out with the delinquent Ethan, can't possibly have a decent life. You're probably just putting on airs or want a trip abroad by some fluke, right? Linda was truly the epitome of arrogance. Ever since our school days, she seemed to find satisfaction only in looking down on others. She probably believes that everyone who dropped out of school leads a worthless life. Sighing, I held back an agitated Lisa with a gesture and addressed Linda. "What brings you here, then?" Linda, whose family was wealthy, used to travel abroad frequently on her parents' money even during our student days. Asking if it was the same case this time, it turned out my guess wasn't off the mark. "I'm on vacation, funded by Daddy's money. It's the privilege of a rich daughter to travel abroad easily." It baffled me how she could be so arrogant using not her own money but her father's. I couldn't comprehend her way of thinking. It's her father who's remarkable, not Linda herself. "Well, that's great. Your father is impressive," I said honestly, but she didn't seem to understand my words accurately. "Of course, now that you get it, disappear from my sight before your poverty rubs off on me." Puffing up her chest, she waved her hand dismissively as if to shoo me away. Talking to her any longer would only sour my mood. I thought of leaving with Lisa. But just then, Lisa exclaimed, "Oh, no," and looked shocked. I think she's the wife of the man who's been stalking me." Hearing this, I couldn't help but stare intently at Linda. Normally, such a stare might anger her, but it seemed Linda had something more pressing on her mind. She glared at Lisa with a fierce expression. "What's with this woman? Don't say such rude things just because you're a bit cute. My husband would never approach another woman. No, I'm sure. He showed me a photo of his wife." There was no doubt about whose words to believe. I stepped forward to shield Lisa from Linda. "Your husband seems to be causing trouble for my Lisa. Do you have any idea about this?" "I already told you, no. I don't have anything to talk about with someone like you, at the bottom of the social ladder." Linda, angered, started to walk away. I knew I had to be careful not to jump to conclusions. Although long talks with Linda tend to become confrontational, it's essential to confirm facts before acting. "Okay, show me a photo of your husband. If it's a misunderstanding, I'll apologize properly and do anything you say. So I deliberately humbled myself. Doing anything she said seemed to appeal to her. Reluctantly, but complying, she showed me the phone screen. I can't believe I have to do this. Here, this is my husband. I thought it odd how she referred to her own husband, but ignored it to avoid complicating things. Lisa confirmed with a nod, "That's the man who's been stalking me." "What? You have a grudge against my husband? Trying to defame him? Handing around dropouts? You must be no good either. Don't get too carried away, or I'll write bad things about you on social media and make your life hell." Considering the extreme things Linda started saying, I remembered the stalker's characteristics Lisa had described. I began listing them to Linda. "Does your husband have a habit of dropping his gaze before he starts stalking?" "What? Yes. But how do you know that? And when he wipes sweat, he first checks if his handkerchief is clean, right?" "That's true." But, although Linda didn't explicitly affirm it, her reactions made it clear I wasn't off the mark. After listing about 3 more characteristics that only someone close would know, she collapsed to the ground. "No way, I don't believe it. My husband." Lisa, seemingly feeling pity, whispered to me so that Linda couldn't hear. "Also, the man stalking me seems to be causing trouble for your friend Ethan as well. Just a few days ago, he boasted about punishing a young subordinate named Ethan." Lisa, emotionally drained from everything, knew Ethan was my friend but had forgotten to report this to me. I never imagined that the dots would connect like this. But in a way, it was fortunate that everything was coming to light here. I extended a hand to the collapsed Linda. "If you have even a shred of conscience, can you help us out? What do you want me to do?" Her wary gaze fixed on me, but she seemed too drained to reject me as she did before because of my dropout status. "You'd want to clear up what your husband is doing, right? Help us, and we'll help you." Hesitant, Linda took my hand. Her arrogance aside, she seemed to genuinely love her husband. So she wanted to clarify the situation. I wasn't keen on cooperating with her due to our past, but it was necessary now. Her presence would be vital for what was to come. Linda and Mike were apparently on separate activities at the time. Mike was touring tourist spots, and they were supposed to meet up after the surfing competition. We quickly started devising a plan to uncover the truth before then. Mike appears to be quite capable at his job and is known to be a sharp individual. Additionally, he's the type to be on high alert, so there's a chance he would evade a straightforward conversation. Therefore, we needed to approach him in an unexpected manner. While brainstorming, a call came through on my phone. It was from an employee at the company, needing clarification on something. "Mr. Anderson, I'm a bit confused about something. Can I ask you about it, since I can't reach anyone else? It's about when you helped us with our work." That matter. I had once helped with regular employee tasks due to a staffing shortage, and they wanted to clarify something about that. After answering a few questions and hanging up, I noticed Linda staring at me. "You were talking so authoritatively, like you're some company president." "It's not like, I actually am." Linda looked skeptical, but Lisa's nod confirmed it, leaving her speechless. Then Linda bombarded Lisa with questions about the company's name, size, and employee count. After hearing the answers, Linda seemed to finally accept the truth. "You're the president of a large corporation. Want to see my business card?" When I showed her my business card, she seemed to finally believe it wasn't a lie. The world is full of unbelievable things. Maybe I should buy a lottery ticket now. Right now, you sound incredibly naive. While I understand the sentiment that good things might follow, her words made her sound unintelligent. My becoming a president was due to my own efforts, not mere chance. Realizing what she said, Linda blushed slightly and retorted, "Shut up." "Fine. Anyway, we've got a riff plan, so help us out." "I get it. Just because you're an old acquaintance, don't order me around. Her not protesting about being directed by a dropout might be a sign of growth. That's why I explained my plan to Linda. And together with Lisa, we ironed out the details and revised our strategy. Later, watching the competition, Ethan performed well in the surfing semifinals, setting a good record. However, despite his best efforts, he narrowly missed out in the final. After congratulating Ethan on his efforts, I explained the situation to him and asked for his cooperation. As the evening sun began to set, the surfing competition tents were being folded and the audience started to leave. We continued to wait for Mike. Interestingly, upon seeing Ethan being fawned over by fans, Linda looked perplexed and offered him a sort of apology. Her inability to be straightforward led her to say, "I thought you were just a muscle-brained dropout," which hardly sounded like an apology, but I considered it progress nonetheless. I didn't want to tease Linda and ruin the somewhat positive atmosphere we had managed to create. If Ethan had been bothered, I wouldn't have been ready to forgive, but he seemed imperturbed. "Well, thanks for apologizing," he said, easily forgiving Linda. This lightened the mood among us. Ethan's straightforward and unburdened character was truly a blessing in this situation. While we were exchanging these interactions, Mike arrived. He looked like an ordinary person, but knowing he was the one troubling Ethan and Lisa made me angry. So, I decided to start acting as if I were arguing with Linda. "You've always been like this, looking down on people for being dropouts. Of course, dropouts are all at the bottom of humanity. That's what my father always said. They're just meant to be bossed around and work for others." Mike, witnessing our argument, looked bewildered and glanced over at us. That's when Lisa stepped in front of Mike. He seemed surprised to see her, a woman supposed to be back in America, here, abroad. However, he soon had bigger concerns. Lisa spoke with Mike, who then exclaimed loudly, "That man is President Anderson, who deals with my company." As planned, we revealed my identity to make Mike anxious. He tried to intervene, sweating profusely. But then Ethan appeared and addressed him. "Mike, what are you doing here? Did you come to see my competition?" "Competition? Why is Ethan here?" "Actually, there was a surfing competition here today. I did pretty well and even gained some fans. I'll treat you all today to say thanks." Mike seemed quite confused as he listened to Ethan's rapid-fire explanation. Seeing a new side of someone he had looked down upon, he might have thought he was dreaming. Fans for dropout Ethan. Competing. Impossible. His feelings were understandable. Anyone would be overwhelmed in such a situation. However, if he were in a state to make rational judgments, we wouldn't be able to draw out his true intentions. Therefore, we needed to keep him in the state of confusion a while longer. I faced Linda, focusing on our act of arguing. I continued to act angry, raising my voice as if in a ray-all argument. "You've always said I was trash for hanging out with delinquents in middle school, right? I won't let you forget that. Do you really enjoy labeling people so much? Despite not knowing much about Ethan and the others, you sure made a lot of assumptions. All delinquents are worthless. It's clear without thinking. Birds of a feather flock together. Associating with bottom dwellers proves your poor judgment." I was getting heated up, and it was becoming hard to tell if I was acting or speaking my mind. Remembering high school days, I felt my temper rising and knew it was time to cool down. Sensing the right moment, I caught Mike intervening and sent a signal to Linda. "Wait, Linda. That man is President Anderson, with whom we do business. Don't yell like that, Jack. That's so typical of a dropout. My husband has never raised his voice over petty squabbles." Linda, catching my cue, gave a small nod. "My husband is a division manager at a major corporation, quite different from you, a dropout, huh?" Hearing this, I delivered the critical line. "Well, he's getting fired tomorrow, you know." "What?" Linda, of course, was acting, not genuinely shocked. However, Mike, hearing this, was visibly surprised. What? The man, Mike, hearing the same words from his wife, seemed frozen, unable to comprehend the situation. Feeling the need to press on, I explained the reasons in rapid succession. You've been berating your subordinates and exerting excessive pressure on them, it seems. We've already looked into it. Since your company has closed dealings with mine, I'm quite familiar with the internal matters. Your husband is likely to be fired soon. While it's true that we have closed business dealings, I wouldn't normally know about an ordinary employee. But suggesting the possibility was enough for now. That can't be true, really. It's not a lie. I heard he's been stalking my Lisa, sending her expensive gifts, and following her after work. We have evidence, so the police might get involved. Having finished the act, I looked at Linda and Mike. Mike, breaking into a sweat, said nothing and, grabbing Linda's arm, ran off. I don't know what happened to them after that. Despite feeling that we couldn't just leave them be, we ended up losing track of them while following. Even when I tried calling on my cell phone, I couldn't get through, leaving me worried for the rest of the day. But the next day, on our way to the airport with Ethan and Lisa, Linda finally contacted me. Her tearful voice informed me that their discussion hadn't gone well. I've decided to divorce Mike. Linda hadn't revealed that our argument was a ruse, and it seemed she had been written off by her husband. Are you sure? Not telling the truth. He said he never really loved me, that he married me only because of my father's pressure. He thought being with a wealthy girl would be beneficial. Well, I guess I never really saw people for who they are. It's my own fault. Though I never liked Linda much, I couldn't kick someone when they were down. I gripped my phone silently, unable to find the right words. Switching places with me, Ethan seemed to have something he wanted to say. After asking for my permission, he borrowed my cell phone to speak with Linda. Hey, Linda, remember how you used to brag about making fancy cakes in middle school? I remembered it well. It was the day we made cakes in home economics class. Linda brought luxury fruits, truffles, caviar, and other unnecessary ingredients, gaining the attention of other students. That happened, yeah, so what? You ate them in front of us, saying we poor people couldn't afford such things. So, treat us next time. Even Ethan, often considered a muscle brain, must have known that his words were said in sarcasm. However, he brought up that topic deliberately to encourage Linda. All right, I don't know if it'll make amends, but okay, you've always been so positive. Even in middle school, I was probably just jealous and acted out. It seemed even someone like Linda was swayed by Ethan's genuine nature. People like Ethan, who can become friends with others without any ulterior motives or calculations, are rare and valuable. As a CEO, frequently encountering the hidden facets of people makes the task of building new relationships somewhat daunting. Having a friend like Ethan was indeed fortunate. We returned to our home country a bit more lighthearted. Linda started preparing for her divorce. However, it seems Mike continued to linger around Lisa. While he apparently didn't speak to her, his stalking behavior continued. Despite being served with a restraining order by the police, he seemingly hadn't learned his lesson and continued sending gifts. Aware of his superior's disgraceful behavior, Ethan began to reflect on his own actions. Regretting calling me in violation of company rules, he now restrains himself from doing so. Even fundamentally good people can fall astray when those around them are too lenient. But both Linda and Ethan managed to turn things around. Therefore, it stands to reason that Mike, too, should be able to make a fresh start. However, there's still no sign of him changing his behavior. Weeks later, as we were busy welcoming new employees, Lisa came to me with a troubled face. Apparently, Mike's stalking hadn't ceased. He had been quiet initially, but recently started approaching her again. I was astonished that Mike still had the energy to continue his stalking behavior after everything that had happened overseas. Perhaps he didn't understand the gravity of his situation. Irritated, I told Lisa to contact the police if Mike showed up again. That day, after finishing work as usual, I didn't expect to encounter Mike. As I was about to escort Lisa to the nearest station for her safety, I spotted him. He was standing behind some trees near our company and started running towards us as we approached. "Please, talk to your company about me. It's all a misunderstanding. I need to explain." Lisa looked scared, so I stepped in between them. "If I get fired, I'll become a laughingstock. Please, convince Mr. Anderson. Mr. Smith at my company is stubborn. He won't listen to anyone's opinion." His pathetic demeanor was evident as he approached me, smiling nervously. "Mr. Anderson, I haven't done anything wrong. I don't know what Ethan told you, but you're being deceived. It's true that people can make rational decisions when cornered." In a calm state of mind, he would have realized that his actions would only lead to bad outcomes, but the fear of getting fired was driving him to foolish acts. I sighed internally and addressed Mike. "Why continue sending expensive gifts to Lisa if it's all a misunderstanding? And those gifts, they are reportedly stolen from other female employees, aren't they?" "I didn't. It's a misunderstanding. I wouldn't do such a thing." Before returning from overseas, I had called Mike's company, and they had conducted some investigations. What I'm speaking about now is the truth that was uncovered as a result of the investigations. The team was competent, and by the time we returned to America, many things had come to light, which was a relief. You repeat troubling behavior when drinking, forcibly invite favorite employees for drinks, create havoc in bars, and get banned. Is all this a misunderstanding too? It turned out Mike was like a dustbin. Hit it, and all sorts of dirt comes out. Even though my claim of his imminent firing was a bluff, the newly discovered misconduct indeed started real discussions about his termination. President Smith of his company was exasperated by Mike's behavior. "Please, don't involve Lisa or me any further. If you can't accept this, I'll call the police right here." As I glared at him, Mike's face paled. He didn't expect his misdeeds to be known so precisely. Yet, he kept making excuses, trembling. "I haven't done anything wrong. Ethan is just a muscle-brained dropout. And I thought the expensive items were better suited for a beautiful young woman than an older woman." Considering his attitude towards these actions as normal, he must have a significantly distorted sense of ethics. It's possible that throughout his life, there was no one to reprimand him or correct his behavior. Likely, he never encountered a situation that forced him to confront and correct his mistakes. "I'm just a victim here. I did nothing wrong. Why should I be fired for doing the right thing?" he shouted, red-faced with anger. "People at the bottom of society aren't much use alive. Wouldn't young, beautiful women appreciate brand items more than old ladies? Is education and appearance that important to you? Of course it is. That's common sense." He probably won't change his perspective. His convictions are so deeply ingrained that no one's words can reach him. Feeling his sense of emptiness, I urged Lisa to leave and turned our backs on him. "Let's go. It's better to stay inside the company for a while before heading home." "Okay." Mike continued to rant, but we ignored him. After spending some time in the company's break room, we saw that he had left. Afterward, Mike apparently resorted to desperate measures. He tried offering money to those he had troubled, and conversely, he threatened them to prevent them from speaking out against him. However, once Linda became aware of this, she was furious, leading to constant marital disputes. Eventually, he was fired and left the company. The divorce proceedings with Linda progressed, and they officially separated. After being fired, Mike drifted through various jobs before moving to a rural area where he knew no one. Rumors suggest that after moving to a new location, he continued to struggle. eventually resorting to crime out of desperation and landing in prison. After Mike was terminated, Ethan and his colleagues felt a sense of relief. A compassionate and gentle superior took Mike's place, restoring peace and stability to their daily routines. The employees who had been frequenting the hospital have regained their health. Following her divorce from Mike, Linda seems to be forming a positive relationship with Ethan. Their reconciliation began abroad when she apologized, and since then, they have been spending more time together. Lisa and I also often spend our days off with them, leading to regular double dates. To be honest, since that incident, I've developed quite an interest in Lisa, but as it's my first experience with love, I'm uncertain about how to proceed. So, I've been seeking advice from Linda, who has been unexpectedly caring and sisterly, and I'm doing my best. Having become softer and less arrogant, Linda now feels more like a friend to me. I wish I could show my middle school self how things have turned out. Our company, now home to many new employees, is also moving in a positive direction. Currently, I'm in the process of selecting a ring for a proposal, hoping that goes well too. Once the proposal is accepted, I plan to have a wedding with Lisa and start building a happy, large family.